Did you know that in 1989, a lighthouse keeper in Norway sent one final radio message that made the Coast Guard seal the lighthouse forever? This is the complete story of what happened at Sletness Lighthouse and what they found in the basement. Sletness Lighthouse sits on the northernmost point of mainland Europe, 40 kilometers from the nearest town. Built in 1905, it guided ships through the dangerous Arctic waters. During winter, the sea freezes solid for months, and the lighthouse keeper works completely alone. Magnus Olsen was 52 years old when he took the position in November 1989. He was experienced, having worked at 3 other lighthouses. His wife had died the year before, and he wanted solitude. The Coast Guard checked on him once a week by radio. December 1st, Magnus made his routine radio call. Everything normal, weather clear, ice forming on the sea, no problems. December 3rd, 6 p.m., Magnus radioed the Coast Guard. His voice was shaking. He reported seeing a figure standing on the ice below the lighthouse, about 200 meters away. The figure was completely motionless, facing the lighthouse. Magnus said it looked like a person, but something was wrong. The proportions weren't right. The arms were too long. The Coast Guard told him it was probably a seal or a trick of the light. The Arctic winter plays with your mind. Magnus agreed and signed off. December 4th, 6 p.m., Magnus radioed again. The figure was still there. It hadn't moved in 24 hours. He'd watched it through binoculars. It was definitely human-shaped, wearing what looked like dark clothing. But in 24 hours, it hadn't moved at all. The temperature was minus 30 degrees. No human could survive that. The Coast Guard said they'd send a boat the next morning to check. Magnus said, "Please hurry. I looked at it through the binoculars for too long. I think it saw me looking. I think it knows I'm watching." December 5th, 4 a.m., Magnus broke radio silence. He was whispering. The figure had moved. It was now only 50 meters from the lighthouse. He hadn't seen it move, but every time he looked away and looked back, it was closer. The Coast Guard told him to lock himself inside and wait for the boat. Magnus said, "I can't stop looking at it now. If I look away, it moves. I have to keep watching." For 2 hours, the Coast Guard listened to Magnus breathing into the radio, saying nothing. Then, at 6:03 a.m., Magnus screamed. The figure was at the base of the lighthouse. He could see its face now through the window. He screamed, "It has my face. It's me. It's wearing my face, but the smile is wrong. The mouth is too wide." The Coast Guard heard banging sounds. Magnus was yelling, "It's climbing the outside of the building. It's coming to the door. How is it climbing? There's nothing to hold on to." Then Magnus whispered, "It's at my door now. It's knocking. It's knocking with my rhythm. The way I knock, it knows." The radio went silent for 10 seconds. Then Magnus spoke one last time, very calmly. "I'm going to let it in. I want to see what happens when we touch." The Coast Guard heard the door open, then a sound like wet breathing, then nothing. The Coast Guard arrived at 9 a.m. The lighthouse door was wide open. Snow had blown inside, covering the floor. Magnus was gone. His coat was still on the hook. His breakfast was on the table, still warm. The coffee was steaming. But every mirror in the lighthouse was shattered, not cracked, completely shattered from the inside, like something had punched through them from behind the glass. They found Magnus's logbook on the desk. The final entry was dated December 5th, 6:15 a.m. It said, "It wasn't standing on the ice. It was standing under it, looking up through the frozen surface.
I could see its footprints underneath, walking in the water below. When it reached the lighthouse, it didn't climb. It walked through the wall. It passed through solid stone like it was water. I know what it wants now. It doesn't want to kill me. It wants to wear me. It wants to be me. And the terrible thing is, I want to let it. I want to know what it feels like to be on both sides. Below that, in different handwriting, shakier, it said, "He let me in. We touched. Now I remember being him. I remember his whole life. I remember his wife. I remember loving her. But I also remember the dark water. I remember waiting under the ice for decades. I remember watching ships pass overhead. I remember being so hungry." The Coast Guard sealed the lighthouse immediately. But 3 days later, a fishing boat reported seeing a figure standing on the ice near Sletness. The figure waved at them. The captain said it looked exactly like Magnus Olsen. They waved back. Then they noticed the figure was standing in the same spot where Magnus had first reported seeing it. And it wasn't moving, just standing there, staring at the lighthouse. When they radioed the Coast Guard, they were told to leave the area immediately and never return. In 1990, the lighthouse was automated. No more keepers. But maintenance workers who service the equipment report strange things. They hear knocking on the door in Magnus's rhythm. They find wet footprints leading from the walls, and sometimes they see a figure in the mirrors before the glass shatters. In 2003, a maintenance crew refused to enter the building. They said they saw 2 figures through the window. Both looked exactly like Magnus Olsen. Both were smiling. Both were staring at them. When the crew looked at each other, they realized they were both smiling the same way, too wide. They left and never came back. The Norwegian government classified the lighthouse records in 2005, but local fishermen still report seeing a figure on the ice during winter. Sometimes 1 figure, sometimes 2, always standing perfectly still, always watching. And if you ever visit northern Norway in winter and you see someone standing alone on the frozen sea, staring at you, don't wave back, because they might wave exactly the way you wave, and then you'll know. It's learning. It's always learning. And one day, it might decide to be you.